My name is Galia Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I'm the founder of Nexus Solutions. I rarely attend family gatherings anymore because they always turn into the Tyler Show. My older brother has a real talent for making everyone feel small, especially me. This Easter, I reluctantly showed up, hiding my company's recent success. As we passed around the ham, Tyler smirked. Not everyone can handle a real career in tech. That's when my grandmother Rose, who never raises her voice, looked at me and asked, "Is that why her company just acquired yours?" If you're watching this right now, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your location in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics that'll make your jaw drop, just like everyone's did at our dinner table that day. Growing up in suburban Boston, Tyler was 3 years older than me and seemed to excel at everything. Our childhood home on Maple Street had the perfect backyard for playing catch, building science projects, or simply dreaming under the stars. In those early years, Tyler and I were actually quite close. He taught me how to ride a bike when I was 5, helped me with my math homework, and defended me when neighborhood kids were mean. I adored him, following him around like a shadow. He was my hero, my big brother, my protector. Things started to change when Tyler entered middle school. Suddenly, I wasn't cool enough to hang around with. He developed new friends, new interests, and a new attitude. As we grew, our relationship morphed from supportive siblings to fierce competitors. It wasn't a competition I signed up for, but one Tyler created, and our parents inadvertently fostered. Mom and Dad were good people who worked hard. Dad was an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and Mom taught English at the local high school. They valued conventional success, good grades, athletic achievements, and ultimately stable careers. Tyler fit perfectly into their vision of success. He brought home straight A's, captained the soccer team, and was elected class president 3 years running. "Tyler's going places," my father would announce at family gatherings, his hand clasped firmly on my brother's shoulder. "Harvard material, this one." I was different. While I maintained decent grades, I wasn't exceptional in the traditional sense. I preferred taking apart computers to joining the debate team. I spent hours teaching myself coding languages while Tyler collected athletic trophies. My parents never quite knew what to make of me. They weren't unkind, just bewildered by my interests. "Computers are for playing games, Galia. You need to focus on developing skills that will get you a good job someday." The science fair in 7th grade crystallized our family dynamic. I was 12 and Tyler was 15. He created a standard volcano model, perfectly executed but utterly conventional. I built a rudimentary computer program that could recognize and sort different types of geometric shapes through a webcam. My project took months of work, learning coding principles far beyond my grade level. Tyler won first place with his volcano. The judges praised his presentation skills and scientific explanation of chemical reactions. My project malfunctioned during judging when the classroom lighting changed, throwing off my camera calibration. I received an honorable mention. That evening, our living room mantel was rearranged to prominently display Tyler's golden trophy. My certificate was taped to the refrigerator, where it hung for a week before being replaced by the grocery list. "That's why presentation matters, Galia," Tyler told me smugly. "Not everyone can handle a career in tech." That's when my grandmother Rose, who never raised her voice, looked at me and asked, "Is that why her company just acquired yours?" Our high school graduation gifts further illustrated the difference in our parents' expectations for us. Tyler received a brand new car, a silver sedan that he drove proudly around town. I got a laptop, practical for college, but lacking the celebration of freedom that came with Tyler's gift. "A car would be wasted on you," my father explained when he saw my disappointment. "You hardly ever leave the house anyway." He wasn't wrong, but his words stung. I spent most of my time in my room working on coding projects, but not because I was antisocial. I was building skills, creating, learning. No one seemed to recognize that. The summer before I left for college, our family took a vacation to Cape Cod. One evening, I excitedly shared my idea for a social media platform specifically for connecting people with rare medical conditions.
The code would be complex, but I think I could build it, I explained, passionate about the potential impact. Tyler laughed, scrolling through his phone. Galia, coding is just glorified typing. The real challenge is building a business model that works. That's why tech companies hire business majors to run things. My parents nodded along, finding wisdom in his dismissal. Throughout these years, only my grandmother Rose seemed to see something special in me. Grandmother Rose lived an hour away and visited monthly. She had been a mathematics teacher in the 1960s, one of few women in her department. During her visits, she would seek me out in my bedroom or the basement where I had set up my computer equipment. While everyone else in the family found my interests bizarre, Grandmother Rose would sit beside me, her eyes bright with interest, as I explained what I was working on. "Your mind works differently, Galia," she told me once. "That's not a weakness. It's your greatest strength." When I graduated high school, alongside the laptop from my parents, Grandmother Rose gave me a book about women pioneers in computer science, inscribed with the message, "The world needs different thinkers. Never apologize for seeing patterns others miss." That fall, I headed to the State University with a partial scholarship, while Tyler went off to an Ivy League school with a full ride. At family gatherings, this difference was frequently mentioned. "State schools have some decent programs," my aunt would say, kindly patting my hand, "and you're saving your parents money." Meanwhile, Tyler's college choice was celebrated as evidence of his exceptional nature and promising future. No one seemed to consider that I had chosen my school specifically for its cutting-edge computer science program, or that I had turned down offers for more prestigious universities that didn't offer the specialized courses I wanted. The divide was set. Tyler was the star, the one with potential. I was the oddball, the one they worried about. This dynamic would follow us into adulthood, shaping our relationship in ways I couldn't have predicted, and setting the stage for the confrontation that would eventually change everything. College was both a relief and a challenge. Finally, away from Tyler's shadow, I could immerse myself in the world of computer science without constant comparisons. The late 1990s and early 2000s were an exciting time in tech. The internet was transforming from a novelty into an essential part of daily life. Startups were emerging daily, and the possibilities seemed endless. My excitement, however, was tempered by the reality of being one of only 7 women in my computer science program of 60 students. The gender imbalance created a strange environment where I was either invisible or hypervisible, depending on the day. Group projects were particularly difficult. "You can handle the documentation," a male classmate once told me, not even bothering to ask if I wanted to code. "Your writing is probably better than ours." I fought for coding assignments, stayed late in the lab to prove myself, and gradually earned respect from professors, if not always from peers. While I struggled for recognition, Tyler thrived at business school. His charisma and conventional intelligence made him popular with students and faculty alike. He secured prestigious internships each summer, while I pieced together part-time work at the university IT department and small coding projects I found online. Christmas break my sophomore year was particularly painful. Tyler arrived home with stories of his summer internship at Goldman Sachs and his upcoming interview with Google. The entire extended family listened aptly as he described the Google campus and the famous perks offered to employees. "What about you, Galia? Any big plans?" Uncle Frank asked during dinner. Before I could answer, Tyler jumped in. "Galia's still figuring things out. Not everyone knows what they want right away." "I'm actually working on an e-commerce platform for independent bookstores. It would help them compete with Amazon by creating a collective inventory system." "That sounds interesting," my aunt replied with a polite smile, before turning back to Tyler. "Now, tell us more about Google.
Do they really have free food all day? After graduation, our paths diverged further. Tyler landed a marketing position at a major tech company in San Francisco, complete with a six-figure starting salary and stock options. I decided to try building my own startup, an early attempt at creating a platform connecting freelance designers with small businesses. The platform was clunky, underfunded, and ultimately unsuccessful. After 8 months of working 16-hour days and depleting my small savings, I had to admit defeat. The timing wasn't right. My technical skills needed refinement, and I lacked the business connections to secure proper funding. At Thanksgiving that year, my failed startup became a cautionary tale. This is why business knowledge is so important, Tyler explained to our cousins while I sat silently pushing sweet potatoes around my plate. Technical skills alone don't build successful companies. I found work at a small software development company while continuing to develop my skills and ideas on the side. Meanwhile, Tyler's career accelerated. He was promoted twice in 18 months, featured in a business magazine's 30 Under 30 list, and purchased a luxury condo in the heart of San Francisco. At every family gathering, Tyler's success was the main topic of conversation. My parents called me weekly with updates about his latest achievements, seemingly oblivious to how these conversations affected me. Tyler's company just opened an office in Tokyo. They're flying him first class next month to help set things up. My parents' concern about my career choices became increasingly obvious. My father started sending me job listings for stable positions at insurance companies and banks. My mother regularly suggested I considered teaching computer science instead of the startup business. "We just worry about your future, honey," she said during a particularly difficult phone call. "You work so hard, but you don't seem to be getting ahead like Tyler." Financial struggles compounded my frustration. While Tyler lived in luxury, I worked multiple jobs to fund my ideas. I took freelance coding projects on weekends, taught coding classes at a community center in the evenings, and still barely made rent some months. Every dollar I earned beyond basic living expenses went back into my various projects and prototypes. Through all this, Grandmother Rose remained my steadfast supporter. When things were particularly tight, I would sometimes find an envelope in my mailbox containing a few $100s and a note simply saying, "Invest in yourself. Love, Grandma." She never mentioned these gifts when we spoke, understanding they were both financial and emotional lifelines I wasn't ready to acknowledge openly. During our monthly phone calls, she asked detailed questions about my work, genuinely interested in understanding concepts most people in my family found incomprehensible. The true breaking point in my relationship with Tyler came 3 years after graduation. I had developed a promising algorithm for data analysis and needed connections to potential investors. Tyler was now well established in the tech industry with an extensive network. During a rare visit to San Francisco for a tech conference, I asked him to coffee and explained my project, hoping he might introduce me to potential investors or advisors. "It's not quite ready for prime time," he said after a cursory glance at my business plan. "The technical foundation seems solid, but the market positioning is all wrong. Honestly, I can't risk my reputation on something this underdeveloped." "I'm not asking you to stake your reputation," I replied, my voice tight. "Just an introduction to people who might see its potential." "Look, Galia," he sighed, checking his watch. "This is why technical people need business partners. You're solving a problem nobody's asking to be solved." He left shortly after, claiming a work emergency. Later that week, I saw on social media that the emergency was apparently a sailing trip with his colleagues. The photos showed him smiling on a yacht in the bay, champagne in hand, while I returned to my shared apartment to continue working alone. That night, I removed Tyler from my list of potential resources and decided that whatever success I achieved would be entirely independent of my brother's influence. The division between us was now complete. The idea that would eventually change my life came to me 3 years after college during a freelance project for a healthcare data management company. I noticed inefficiencies in how patient data was being processed and protected, creating unnecessary costs and security risks. Over several months, I developed a revolutionary software architecture that could securely handle sensitive information while making it more accessible to authorized users. I called it Secure Flow, and I knew it had potential to transform healthcare data management. The system used advanced encryption and innovative access protocols that were simultaneously more secure and more user-friendly than anything on the market. The technical achievement was significant, but I had learned from past failures that technical excellence alone wouldn't ensure success. Thanksgiving that year marked a turning point in my family relationships. After avoiding holiday gatherings for months, I reluctantly agreed to attend dinner at my parents' house. Tyler was there, recently promoted to vice president at his company, and eager to share his success. Throughout the meal, he dominated conversation with stories about his important clients, his team of 20 employees, and his recent business trip to Europe. My parents and extended family listened attentively, asking questions that allowed him to elaborate on his achievements. When the conversation finally turned to me, I briefly mentioned my new project. It's a healthcare data security system. I've been working on it for about 6 months and just filed a provisional patent. A patent? My father exclaimed, showing genuine interest for once. That sounds serious. Before I could continue, Tyler interrupted. Patents are pretty common in tech, Dad. My company files dozens every year. They're mostly defensive measures. He turned to me with a condescending smile. Is this another solo project, Galia? Or have you finally found a business partner who can take your ideas to market? I'm working with a small team of developers, I answered, trying to maintain my composure. We're bootstrapping for now, but planning to seek investment next quarter. Huh, bootstrapping is just a fancy word for underfunded. You know there are plenty of entry-level product management jobs that would teach you how real tech companies operate. Your hobby business isn't going to compete with established players. It's not a hobby, I insisted, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. We're solving a real problem that affects millions of patients. Sure, Tyler nodded, patronizingly. But at some point, you need to think about getting a real job. Not everyone can make it in tech entrepreneurship. There's no shame in admitting that and finding a stable position somewhere. The table fell silent. My mother quickly changed the subject, asking about dessert preferences. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and pressed my forehead against the cool mirror, fighting back tears of frustration and anger. That Thanksgiving became a catalyst. The humiliation of being dismissed in front of my entire family crystallized something in me. I drove home that night with a new resolve. I would either succeed on my own terms or fail trying, but I would no longer subject myself to Tyler's belittlement or my family's doubt. In the months that followed, I withdrew from family gatherings. I declined Christmas, made excuses for birthdays, and limited my contact to occasional phone calls with my parents and more regular conversations with Grandma Rose. My parents noticed my absence, but seemed to accept my excuses about work demands. They didn't push, perhaps relieved to avoid the tension between their children. Only Grandma Rose challenged me. She said, running away isn't the same as standing your ground. I'm not running away, I insisted. I'm focusing on what matters. I can't build this company while constantly defending myself against Tyler's attacks. Just don't confuse avoiding conflict with avoiding family. Some bridges, once burned, are very hard to rebuild. Her words stayed with me, but I remained committed to my path of independence. I poured everything into Secure Flow. I worked 80-plus-hour weeks, often sleeping on the small couch in my office. I subsisted on coffee, takeout, and determination. The technical challenges were immense. Building a system that was both highly secure and intuitive for healthcare professionals required constant refinement. Each iteration brought new problems to solve, from regulatory compliance issues to user interface challenges. There were many nights I nearly gave up. One particularly difficult evening after a potential investor had pulled out at the last minute, I called Grandma Rose at nearly midnight, forgetting the time difference. "I'm sorry," I said when I realized I had woken her. "I shouldn't have called so late." "Nonsense," she replied, sounding fully awake. "Tell me what's happening." I explained the situation, my voice breaking with exhaustion and despair. "Maybe Tyler is right," I concluded. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this. I've put everything into this company and I have nothing to show for it." "Galia," Grandma Rose said firmly, "do you remember when you were 10 and you built that contraption to feed the neighbor's cat while they were away?" I smiled despite myself. "The automatic food dispenser that kept jamming. Yes, it failed 3 times before you got it right. But you didn't quit because you knew the cat needed to eat. Who needs your solution now? Patients, healthcare workers, anyone who's had their medical data compromised or couldn't access critical information when they needed it. Then you have your answer," she said simply. "Now get some sleep and start again tomorrow." 2 weeks later, I met Taylor Williams at a healthcare technology conference. Taylor had a background in healthcare administration and immediately grasped the potential of SecureFlow. Within a month, we formalized our partnership, with Taylor bringing business expertise and industry connections that complemented my technical skills. Around this time, I learned through industry news that Tyler had started his own venture. After years of criticizing my entrepreneurial efforts, he had left his VP position to found a company called MedSecure, focused on healthcare data security. The irony wasn't lost on me. Not only had he entered the exact field he had dismissed when I discussed it, but he had even chosen a name remarkably similar to SecureFlow. When I mentioned this to Taylor, they weren't surprised. "Your brother probably saw the same market opportunity we did," Taylor reasoned. "Healthcare data security is a growing field." "But he specifically ridiculed my idea," I insisted, "and now he's validating it by copying me." "And now he's validating it by copying you," Taylor pointed out. "Take it as a compliment. Just make sure we execute better than he does." With that perspective, I channeled my frustration into motivation. If Tyler wanted to compete in my space, I would show him exactly what a hobby business could accomplish. The next 18 months transformed both SecureFlow and me. With Taylor handling business development and me leading the technical team, we refined our product and began approaching potential clients. Our first contract came from a small regional hospital looking to update their outdated systems. The implementation was challenging but successful, providing us with the crucial case study. Word began to spread in healthcare circles about our innovative approach. While larger companies offered clunky, expensive solutions, we provided a system that was more secure, more intuitive, and more affordable. 3 more hospitals signed on within 6 months. As our client list grew, so did interest from investors. A Series A funding round brought in $3 million, allowing us to expand our team and enhance our infrastructure. 6 months later, a Series B round added another $12 million. SecureFlow was no longer a struggling startup, but a legitimate contender in the healthcare technology space. Throughout this period of growth, I maintained my distance from family gatherings. My parents occasionally mentioned Tyler's new company during our phone calls, apparently unaware of the direct competition between our businesses. "Tyler's doing something with medical records too," my mother mentioned casually. "Maybe you two could collaborate sometime." I changed the subject, unwilling to explain the reality of our situation. The only family member who knew the full story was Grandma Rose. During our regular calls, I shared both successes and setbacks, finding in her an unwavering supporter and wise counselor. "Your brother stopped by yesterday," she told me during one call. "He was showing me his company website on my iPad. Seemed very proud of himself." "Did you tell him about SecureFlow?" "No, dear. That's your story to tell when you're ready. But I did ask some questions that made him a bit uncomfortable, just to keep him honest." I could imagine Grandma Rose's subtle interrogation and smiled at the thought. As SecureFlow grew, I evolved as a leader. Initially uncomfortable with management responsibilities, I learned to delegate, to trust my team, and to articulate my vision clearly.
The shy, defensive person I had been in family gatherings transformed into a confident CEO who could hold her own in boardrooms and investor meetings. Taylor noticed the change. When we first met, you would apologize before sharing your ideas. Now you own the room. What happened? I stopped trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it. Meanwhile, industry publications began covering SecureFlow. Our innovative approach to healthcare data security earned recognition from technology reviewers and healthcare administrators alike. We won a prestigious innovation award at a major health technology conference, placing us firmly on the industry map. Tyler's company, MedSecure, was also making moves in the market, though with less success. His approach relied heavily on marketing and business relationships rather than technical innovation. While he secured several clients based on his network, his product lacked the elegant architecture and user-friendly design that made SecureFlow stand out. I monitored MedSecure's progress through industry news and mutual connections, never directly engaging, but always aware of their position relative to ours. It became clear that Tyler was struggling to deliver on his promises to clients and investors. Technical issues plagued his product, and customer satisfaction ratings were mediocre. A pivotal moment came when one of the largest hospital networks in the country announced they were seeking a new data security solution. Both SecureFlow and MedSecure were invited to pitch along with several larger established companies. The contract would be worth tens of millions and would establish the winner as an industry leader.
A prominent technology investment firm reached out to discuss potential acquisition targets that could complement our services. During one of these conversations, MedSecure was mentioned as a struggling company with some valuable patents but significant technical debt. They've burned through most of their funding and can't secure additional investment, the analyst explained. Word is they're quietly looking for an exit. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. I could acquire my brother's company. The business case was sound. MedSecure had some complementary technology and client relationships that could benefit SecureFlow. From a purely strategic perspective, it was a reasonable move. But the personal implications were complicated. Would acquiring Tyler's company be seen as revenge? Was I motivated by business logic or by a desire to finally prove myself to my brother and my family? I discussed the situation with Taylor, who approached it pragmatically. If MedSecure were owned by a stranger, would you consider acquiring it, they asked. Yes, I admitted. They have patents we could use and clients in regions where we're trying to expand. Then the fact that your brother owns it should be secondary. This is business, not personal. But of course, it was personal. Every interaction with Tyler had been personal since childhood. Still, I decided to proceed with the acquisition exploration, keeping my connection to MedSecure confidential from all but our most senior team members. Our corporate development team approached MedSecure through intermediaries, never revealing SecureFlow as the interested buyer. Initial discussions confirmed what we had heard. Tyler's company was in financial trouble, having failed to secure additional funding after missing several product development milestones. The due diligence process revealed the extent of MedSecure's problems. Their core technology was fundamentally flawed, requiring a complete rebuild. Their client contracts had escape clauses that could be triggered by a change in ownership. Their team was demoralized after multiple rounds of layoffs. Despite these issues, we made an offer. It was fair, but reflected the company's struggling position, 30% of what Tyler had once valued the company at, with additional performance-based payments that could increase the total if certain targets were met. After brief negotiation, Tyler accepted. The final papers were signed just 3 days before Easter, when our family traditionally gathered at our parents' home. I had already RSVP'd yes to the dinner, having missed the previous 2 years of holiday gatherings. Now I would be attending with knowledge that would fundamentally alter my relationship with Tyler and potentially the entire family dynamic. The night before Easter, I called Grandma Rose, seeking her wisdom. The acquisition will be announced publicly next week. Should I tell Tyler privately before then, or just let him find out with everyone else? What feels right to you? She asked. Part of me wants to see his face when he realizes what's happened, but another part knows that's petty. It's human, but perhaps not your best self. What does your CEO self advise your sister self to do? I considered her framing. My CEO self would handle this professionally, with respect for all parties involved. Then you have your answer, though I won't pretend I'm not looking forward to seeing how this plays out at dinner tomorrow. I laughed, suddenly realizing something. You already knew, didn't you, about the acquisition? I read the business section every morning, and I've been following both your companies since day one. Not much gets past me, dear. With that conversation bolstering my confidence, I prepared to face my family, and particularly Tyler, at Easter dinner. I had no idea just how dramatic the confrontation would be. The acquisition process had been exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. SecureFlow's legal team worked around the clock to structure a deal that would protect our interests while salvaging the valuable components of MedSecure. Throughout the negotiations, we maintained strict confidentiality. Only 5 people at SecureFlow knew I was Tyler's sister, and none of the MedSecure team or their advisors were aware of the connection. The board meeting where we finalized our acquisition strategy was particularly challenging. I had to present the business case dispassionately, as though MedSecure were any other potential acquisition. Based on our analysis, MedSecure has 3 primary assets of value, I explained to our board members. First, their patent portfolio includes 17 healthcare data security innovations that would complement our existing technology. Second, they have established relationships with healthcare providers in the Midwest, where we currently have limited presence. Third, they have a talented core engineering team that could strengthen our development capabilities. One board member raised the obvious question. If they have these valuable assets, why are they failing? Poor execution and leadership, Taylor answered smoothly. Their technology vision was fundamentally flawed, resulting in a product that underperforms and costs too much to maintain. Their burn rate has been unsustainable, and they've missed several key development milestones promised to investors. No one mentioned my connection to the company. Taylor and I had agreed that bringing personal relationships into the discussion would only complicate the board's decision-making process. The board approved our acquisition plan unanimously. With approval secured, we engaged with MedSecure through corporate development intermediaries. I stayed completely removed from direct negotiations, with Taylor serving as the face of SecureFlow throughout the process. Our initial offer was deliberately conservative, knowing MedSecure's precarious financial position would limit their ability to negotiate aggressively. We increased our offer by 15% and added performance-based incentives that could potentially double the payout if certain integration milestones were met. The revised offer was presented with a 48-hour expiration window. On the second day, Tyler's team requested a 24-hour extension, which we granted. On the third day, they accepted our terms with minor modifications to the performance metrics. The desperation was evident in their quick capitulation. The final negotiations moved swiftly. Integration plans were developed, employee retention strategies were outlined, and transition teams were formed. Throughout this process, I remained in the background, reviewing documents and approving decisions, but never directly engaging with MedSecure's leadership team. The final contracts were signed electronically. Tyler's digital signature appeared on my screen, finalizing the sale of his company to mine, though he still had no idea who had acquired him. The public announcement was scheduled for Tuesday after Easter, giving us time to inform employees and prepare communications for clients and partners. With the acquisition complete, but not yet public, I faced the prospect of Easter dinner with mixed emotions. Part of me dreaded the inevitable confrontation, while another part anticipated a resolution to years of competitive tension. I spent hours considering how to handle the situation, ranging from taking Tyler aside for a private conversation to simply allowing events to unfold naturally. As I prepared for dinner, I chose my outfit carefully. A simple blue dress that was professional but not ostentatious, paired with the pearl earrings Grandma Rose had given me for my 30th birthday. I wanted to feel confident but not appear to be flaunting success. The drive to my parents' suburban home was familiar yet strange. I hadn't made this journey for a holiday in over 2 years. As I navigated the tree-lined streets of my childhood neighborhood, memories flooded back. Bike rides with Tyler before our relationship soured, walking to school together, neighborhood block parties where we would gorge ourselves on barbecue and watermelon. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Tyler's car already there, a new luxury SUV that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Taking a deep breath, I gathered the flowers and wine I had brought and approached the front door. My mother answered, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure at seeing me. "Galia, you're here. It's been so long." She embraced me warmly, the familiar scent of her perfume momentarily transporting me back to simpler times. "Hi, Mom," I replied, returning her hug. "Sorry I've been scarce. Work has been intense." "Well, you're here now, and that's what matters." She ushered me inside. "Everyone's in the living room. Tyler's telling us about his latest project." Of course he was. Some things never changed. Entering the living room, I surveyed the familiar faces. My father, looking older than I remembered but still robust, my Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank, my cousin Sarah with her husband Tom and their toddler, and Grandma Rose, seated regally in her favorite armchair, observing everything with bright, intelligent eyes. And then there was Tyler, standing by the fireplace, drink in hand, holding court as he always did. He paused mid-sentence when he saw me, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face, before being replaced by his usual confident smile. "Well, look who emerged from her coding cave," he said, raising his glass in my direction. "The prodigal sister returns." "Good to see you too, Tyler," I replied evenly, moving to kiss my father's cheek and greet the rest of the family. When I reached Grandma Rose, she took my hand in both of hers, her eyes twinkling with unspoken understanding. "Galia, dear, you look well. Success agrees with you." "Thanks, Grandma," I said softly. "It's good to see you." The stage was set for what would become the most dramatic family dinner of our lives. The initial greetings gave way to pre-dinner drinks and conversation that carefully avoided any sensitive topics. My mother asked about my apartment, my father inquired about my recent trip to Chicago for a client meeting, though I didn't specify which client, and my aunt wanted to know if I was seeing anyone. "Work keeps me too busy for serious dating," I answered, a response that prompted concerned glances between my mother and aunt. Throughout this exchange, Tyler maintained a slight smirk, occasionally checking his phone as though more important matters required his attention. The tension between us was palpable, at least to me, though the rest of the family seemed determined to ignore it. As we moved to the dining room for dinner, the conversation turned to more general topics: politics, local news, and my cousin's toddler's latest achievements. I participated politely but remained hyper-aware of Tyler's presence across the table, wondering if he had any inkling of what had transpired between our companies. The meal progressed through salad and main course with relative harmony. My mother had prepared all the traditional Easter dishes: ham with pineapple glaze, scalloped potatoes, fresh asparagus, and homemade rolls. It was comfortable and familiar, a brief respite from the confrontation I knew was coming. As dessert was being served, a homemade carrot cake that had been Tyler's favorite since childhood, my father inadvertently opened the door to what would become the defining moment of the evening. "So, how are both your companies doing?" he asked, looking between Tyler and I. It's unusual to have two entrepreneurs in one family and in the same industry, no less. Tyler seized the opportunity to dominate the conversation once again. "MedSecure is positioned for significant growth this year," he began, conveniently omitting the financial troubles that had forced him to sell. We're pioneering new approaches to healthcare data security that will revolutionize the industry. My father nodded approvingly, clearly impressed by Tyler's confident delivery. And you're the CEO with how many employees now? 42 across 3 offices, he replied. Another careful stretching of the truth given the recent layoffs. We're selective about our team. In tech, especially in specialized fields like healthcare security, you need people who can handle complex challenges. Not everyone is cut out for it. He glanced at me as he said this last part, the implication clear. The table fell momentarily silent, everyone sensing the competitive undercurrent. What about you, Galia? My aunt asked, clearly trying to include me. Your company does something similar, right? Before I could answer, Tyler interjected. Galia's working on a smaller scale solution, more of a niche product. He turned to me with that familiar condescending smile. How many employees do you have now? 10? 15? 87, actually. We'll be over 100 after our recent acquisition. Tyler's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Acquisition? You acquired another company? I nodded, taking a small bite of carrot cake. Must be very small, he said dismissively. The real players in our space are focused on being acquired by larger health tech firms, not making acquisitions themselves. And there it was, the perfect opening. Yet I hesitated, suddenly uncertain about how to proceed. The conversation I had imagined having privately with Tyler was now potentially going to play out in front of our entire family. In that moment of hesitation, Grandma Rose spoke up from her end of the table. Tyler, didn't you mention last month that MedSecure was exploring strategic partnerships? How is that progressing? Tyler shot her an annoying glance before recovering his composed expression. We've had several interested parties. As the leading innovative solution in our space, we're carefully evaluating potential partners who can help us scale globally. The audacity of his lies in the face of having just sold his failing company was astonishing. I felt a surge of indignation, not just at his misrepresentation of MedSecure's status, but at his continued belittling of my work. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, not everyone can handle a real career in tech. Some people talk a big game, but can't deliver when it counts. The table fell silent at my uncharacteristic directness. Tyler's eyes narrowed as he put down his fork. Meaning what, exactly? He asked, his tone dangerously quiet. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Grandma Rolls interjected with perfect timing and devastating precision. Is that why her company just acquired yours?
The Easter dinner table was picture perfect before Grandma Rose dropped her bombshell. My mother had used her best china, the pattern with delicate goof flowers that had been a wedding gift. Crystal glasses caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the dining room windows. The centerpiece featured fresh spring flowers and hand-decorated eggs that Mom had spent hours preparing. Every detail reflected the care she always put into family gatherings, desperately trying to create perfect memories despite the underlying tensions. Grandma Rose's question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Is that why her company just acquired yours? For several seconds, absolute silence engulfed the dining room. Tyler's face, previously animated with self-importance, froze in an expression of disbelief. The color drained from his cheeks as the implication of her words registered. His eyes, wide with shock, darted from Grandma Rose to me and back again. "What did you say?" he finally managed, his voice barely audible. "You heard me, dear," Grandma Rose replied calmly, taking a sip of her wine. "I was just wondering if Galia's company, SecureFlow, is the unnamed buyer that acquired MedSecure last week. The timing seems to fit." Every head at the table turned toward me, expressions ranging from confusion to astonishment. My father's fork clattered against his plate as he set it down, forgetting the bite of carrot cake he had been about to take.
Galia, my mother asked tentatively, what is Grandma talking about? I took a deep breath, realizing there was no turning back now. SecureFlow acquired MedSecure 3 days ago. The public announcement is scheduled for Tuesday. Tyler's shock quickly transformed into anger, his face flushing red as he processed this revelation. That's impossible, he sputtered. The acquiring company was Nexus Healthcare Solutions. Nexus Healthcare Solutions is our holding company. We use it for acquisitions to maintain confidentiality during negotiations. You deliberately hid your identity during the acquisition process, Tyler demanded, his voice rising. It was a standard confidential transaction. Our corporate development team handled all negotiations. The deal was evaluated and approved based on business merits alone. Business merits, Tyler scoffed, pushing back from the table. This was never about business. This was about your resentment, your jealousy. Actually, it was entirely about business, I countered, feeling strangely calm in the face of his growing agitation. MedSecure has valuable patents and client relationships in regions where we want to expand. Your technology needs significant improvement, but there are components worth salvaging. My clinical assessment seemed to infuriate him further. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. You had no right, he shouted. You manipulated the situation, kept me in the dark deliberately. My father finally found his voice. Hold on, both of you. What exactly is going on here? Tyler, are you saying you sold your company to Galia's without knowing it? He didn't sell it to me personally. He sold it to SecureFlow, a company that has outperformed MedSecure in every measurable metric for the past 2 years. We offered fair market value based on MedSecure's financial position and assets. Fair market value? Tyler sputtered. You lowballed us because you knew we were in a difficult position. You were in a difficult position because your product doesn't work properly, and you've been losing clients, I stated bluntly. The offer reflected that reality. My mother's distress was evident as she looked between her children. Please, can we discuss this calmly? This is Easter dinner. Calm? Tyler laughed bitterly. My sister just revealed she secretly acquired my company, and you want me to be calm? Aunt Linda leaned forward, clearly confused. I don't understand. Tyler, you've been telling us for months how successful MedSecure is. Why would you sell if things were going so well? The question hung awkwardly in the air. Tyler's consistent exaggerations about his company's success were now exposed, not just to me, but to the entire family. Business is complicated, he said, finally avoiding direct eye contact. We were exploring strategic partnerships to accelerate growth. That's not what the financial records indicated during due diligence, I said quietly. MedSecure was weeks away from being able to meet payroll obligations. You had already conducted 2 rounds of layoffs and were declined for additional funding by 3 separate investment groups. The stark contrast between Tyler's polished narrative and the reality I was revealing created a palpable tension in the room. My cousin, Sarah's husband Tom, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, suddenly stood up. I think we should take Ellie to the living room, he said to Sarah, lifting their confused toddler from the high chair. She doesn't need to hear this. As they left, my father removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm still trying to understand what happened here. Tyler, is what Galia's saying true? Was your company in financial trouble? Tyler's jaw tightened as he glared at me. We had temporary cash flow issues while waiting for several large contracts to finalize. It's normal in the tech industry. Galia took advantage of a vulnerable moment. Those contracts weren't going to materialize, I countered. 3 of your largest prospective clients had already decided to go with competitors. Our team confirmed this during due diligence. You had no right to investigate my company behind my back, Tyler shouted, slamming his hand on the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. I had every right as the CEO of an acquiring company, I replied, maintaining my composure. Your identity as my brother wasn't relevant to the business transaction. The deal was evaluated on its merits, just like any other acquisition. This is absurd, Tyler said, looking around the table for support. Can't you all see what she's doing? This was never about business. This was about sibling rivalry, about her trying to prove something. Grandma Rose, who had been quietly observing since dropping her initial bombshell, finally spoke again. Tyler, dear, I've been reading the quarterly reports from both your companies since you started them. SecureFlow has been consistently profitable for the past year and a half, while MedSecure has been losing money every quarter. The acquisition makes perfect business sense. Tyler stared at her, betrayal evident in his expression. You knew about this all along? I knew both companies were in the same industry. I knew Galia's was succeeding and yours was struggling. I read about the acquisition in my investment newsletter last Friday, though it didn't name the buyer. I suspected it might be SecureFlow based on the business fit. And you didn't think to warn me? Tyler demanded. Warn you about what? Grandma Rose asked innocently. A fair business transaction? Besides, it wasn't my place to interfere in your professional lives. Interfere? Tyler laughed bitterly. You just dropped a bomb in the middle of Easter dinner. Only after you continued to belittle your sister's achievements, Grandma Rose replied, her voice taking on a rare edge. I've watched for years as you dismissed Galia's talents and ideas. Perhaps it was time for some perspective. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. I think we all need to take a step back and process this information. Tyler, please sit down. Galia, maybe you could explain the situation more fully. Before I could respond, Tyler shook his head, and I'm not staying here to be humiliated. He threw his napkin onto the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. Congratulations, Galia. You finally one-upped me. I hope it feels good. With that, he stormed out of the dining room. Moments later, we heard the front door slam and the sound of his car starting in the driveway. The table fell silent again, the beautiful Easter dinner now in disarray. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the empty seat where Tyler had been sitting. I should go after him, my father said, half rising. Give him some time, I suggested. He needs to process this. You could have told us, my mother said quietly, hurt evident in her voice. About your company, about the acquisition. You're our family. The simple statement hit me harder than Tyler's anger had. In protecting myself from their judgment and Tyler's criticism, I had shut out the people who loved me. You're right, I acknowledged. I should have shared more with you. I was afraid you wouldn't understand or wouldn't believe in me. We've always believed in you, Galia, my father insisted. We just worried about your path because it seemed so uncertain, and we didn't know how to support you the way we supported Tyler. His choices made sense to us, my mother added. Yours were harder to understand. I know, I said softly, and I should have explained better, not just disappeared. The remainder of the dinner passed in subdued conversation, the carrot cake largely forgotten. As we moved to the living room for coffee, I knew I needed to find Tyler and have the conversation we should have had before this public revelation.
Finding Tyler wasn't difficult. Despite the years and tension between us, I knew exactly where he would go. Behind our parents' house was a small public park with the pond where we had spent countless hours as children. At the far end, partially hidden by willows, was a wooden bench where teenage Tyler had retreated after arguments with our parents, and where I had sometimes found him to talk through problems before our relationship soured. Sure enough, there he sat in the gathering dusk, elbows on knees, staring at the still water. I approached slowly, giving him time to notice me and choose whether to stay or leave. He glanced up as I drew near,
his expression unreadable in the fading light. "If you've come to gloat, save it," he said flatly. "You've made your point." I sat beside him, leaving space between us. "That's not why I'm here." "Then why? To offer me a job out of pity? To explain how this was just business, nothing personal?" "Actually, I came to apologize," I said quietly. "Not for the acquisition itself, but for how you found out. You deserve to hear it from me directly, not in front of the entire family." He turned to look at me, surprise momentarily replacing anger. "Why did you do it that way? Was humiliating me part of the plan all along?" "No," I insisted. "I struggled with how to tell you. I wanted to have a private conversation after dinner, but things escalated at the table. And then Grandma Rose spoke up." "Grandma Rose," Tyler scoffed. "She's always favored you." "She believed in me when no one else did," I corrected, "including you." For several minutes, we sat in silence, watching as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared. "Why did you never take me seriously?" I finally asked, voicing the question that had haunted me for years. From the science fair in 7th grade to my healthcare security system, you've always dismissed my ideas. Tyler sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You want the truth? I intimidated you." "I intimidated you?" I repeated incredulously. "You were the golden child, the one everyone believed in." "I was the conventional choice, the safe bet. You were always thinking differently, seeing angles no one else could see. Do you know how threatening that is when your whole identity is built on being the smart one?" His admission stunned me. All these years, I had interpreted his dismissal as genuine belief in my inadequacy, never considering it might stem from his own insecurity. "That science fair project, your shape recognition program was genuinely innovative. My volcano was textbook, literally copied from the example in our science book. I knew the judges would prefer something familiar and well executed over something new that might not work perfectly, but I also knew your ideal was better." "So you tore me down to build yourself up?" I asked, trying to understand rather than accuse. "I guess I did," he admitted, looking away. "It became a pattern. The more successful you became, the more I needed to minimize your achievements to preserve my self-image." His honesty was disarming. For the first time in years, we were having a real conversation without pretense or posturing. "For what it's worth, I was jealous of you too. Everything came so easily to you. The grades, the friends, the confidence. Our parents understood your path. They never questioned your choices the way they questioned mine. They worried about you because they couldn't see where your path led. Dad's an accountant, mom's a teacher. They value security and conventional success because that's what they know." We fell silent again, each processing these new perspectives on our shared history. "So now what?" Tyler finally asked. "You own my company. You've proven your point. Where do we go from here?" "It depends on what you want. Professionally, there's a place for you at Secure Flow if you're interested. You have skills and knowledge that would be valuable to us, particularly in business development and client relationships." "Working for my little sister?" he asked, but there was less bite in his tone than before. "That would be quite the role reversal." "Working with me," I corrected, "as colleagues. We'd need to establish clear boundaries between our professional and personal relationships, but I think we could make it work." The following months brought significant changes. Tyler surprised me by accepting a position as VP of Business Development at SecureFlow. The transition wasn't smooth initially, but gradually something unexpected emerged from the friction. Tyler's strengths in relationship building and market positioning complemented my technical focus and product vision. Our professional relationship slowly influenced our personal one. We established monthly dinners away from office and family pressures where we could talk honestly about both business and personal matters. A year after the acquisition, SecureFlow had doubled its client base and was recognized as the industry leader in healthcare data security. Tyler had built a formidable business development team and was thriving in his role. Looking back on our journey, I realized that success itself was never the real issue between us. The problem was how we defined and pursued it. True fulfillment came not from outperforming each other, but from finding our authentic paths and learning to celebrate both our own achievements and each other's. For those watching who recognize aspects of your family dynamics in our story, remember that success doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. There's room for multiple definitions of success, multiple paths to fulfillment, and multiple stars in the family constellation. Sometimes the greatest achievement isn't outshining others, but learning to shine together.